Valletta, Malta, August 22, 1987. A Libyan intelligence chief steps onto a seaside terrace to watch the sun drop into the Mediterranean. He is safe here. Private villa, trusted guards, the kind of man you cannot reach in Tripoli. But 650 meters offshore, a 58-foot sailing yacht sits at anchor, flying the flag of wealthy British tourists. Inside, two SBS marksmen run a range card and a single code word, SUNDOWN. At 1912 hours, one round crosses open water, threading the only gap his security cannot seal. If this works, it rewrites the board. If it fails, it sparks a war. Operation Silent Wake. Colonel Rashid Khalifa was born in Benghazi in 1943. The third son of a mid-level customs official who taught him that power comes from knowing what others want to hide. At 16, Khalifa watched his eldest brother arrested for criticizing the monarchy. A lesson in the cost of visibility. The brother disappeared into a prison outside Tripoli. Khalifa learned silence. By age 22, Khalifa had joined the Mukhabarat under the new revolutionary government, where his talent for methodical documentation and his inability to be charmed made him valuable. Within 5 years, Khalifa had become what Western intelligence agencies called a systems architect. He did not conduct interrogations himself. He designed the scheduling rotations that prevented detainees from anticipating questions. He did not recruit informants personally. He created the verification protocols that made certain no single handler could compromise a network. Associates described him as mechanical, never impulsive. His defining operational signature was redundancy. Checks within checks, rotating security details, and a personal rule that no meeting location was used twice within a 6-month window. This discipline made him extraordinarily difficult to target. By the early 1980s, Khalifa had risen to Deputy Director of External Operations, the division responsible for Libyan actions beyond its borders. Western services viewed him as the hidden architecture behind a series of incidents that could never quite be traced back to Tripoli. Bombings in European capitals, weapons shipments to proxy groups, and the kind of plausible deniability that suggested professional design. Khalifa treated intelligence work like infrastructure maintenance, invisible, constant, and only noticed when it failed catastrophically. He lived in a fortified compound in Tripoli, surrounded by 3 concentric security perimeters. His daily route varied according to a randomization protocol. Body doubles traveled in identical vehicles. Phone calls were routed through scramblers and changed numbers weekly. Associates joked that Khalifa trusted his security chief more than his wife, and trusted his wife more than his children. The joke was accurate. By mid-1986, British intelligence had attempted 3 separate surveillance operations inside Libya. All 3 collapsed within 48 hours. Khalifa's counter-surveillance teams were too thorough. Tripoli was his fortress, and he had designed every lock. But Khalifa had one ritual that discipline could not erase: an annual August vacation to a villa near Valletta. The pattern had repeated for 7 years. Same month, same villa, same 2-week window. Signals intelligence teams at GCHQ first noticed the anomaly in 1984 when phone intercepts revealed Khalifa discussing ferry schedules with a Maltese property manager. Analysts flagged it as low-priority biographical detail. In 1985, the pattern repeated. In 1986, the pattern repeated again. By early 1987, MI6 analysts understood they were looking at the one predictable crack in an otherwise impenetrable security profile. The doctrine was straightforward. British intelligence called this the asymmetric access strategy. The logic was simple. If you cannot penetrate the fortress, change the battlefield. Khalifa's security in Tripoli assumed ground-based threats: car bombs, infiltrators, ambushes at checkpoints. His villa security in Malta assumed the same threat model because that was the only model he knew. What his team did not account for was maritime geometry. Water provided something ground operations could never offer: standoff distance combined with plausible cover. Three obstacles made conventional approaches impossible. First, Malta maintained diplomatic relations with Libya, meaning any British operation on Maltese soil risked exposure and a diplomatic crisis that could destabilize Mediterranean intelligence sharing. Second, close quarters assassination required infiltration of the villa compound, where Khalifa traveled with a 6-man security detail trained to assume every stranger was a threat. Third, surveillance inside the villa perimeter was impossible without local cooperation, and local cooperation introduced witnesses and compromise vectors that MI6 could not control. Despite these challenges, planners identified the opportunity: open water. A yacht anchored in international waters or tourist zones created no legal footprint. A rifle shot across 600 meters required no penetration of security perimeters. And most critically, wealthy British tourists sailing the Mediterranean in August were background noise, so common that Maltese harbor patrols logged them and forgot them within hours. Intelligence services had tracked Khalifa for 9 years by the time Authorization came through. By March 1987, MI6 concluded Khalifa represented a Category 1 threat, an individual whose removal would degrade Libyan operational capacity significantly enough to justify the diplomatic and operational risks. The authorization to proceed came in May 1987, signed by the Foreign Secretary and countersigned by the Director of Military Intelligence. The codename was assigned in June. Operation Silent Wake would proceed under full deniability protocols, meaning that if anyone was captured, the British government would disavow all knowledge. The window opened when Signals Intelligence confirmed Khalifa's booking confirmation for the same villa in Valletta. Arrival date, August 17th. During the planning phase, the lead MI6 case officer experienced what agency psychologists call operational doubt drift, the moment when the abstract target becomes a specific person, and the person becomes someone whose morning coffee preferences are logged in surveillance transcripts. Khalifa's intercepted communications from July revealed him discussing his daughter's university applications with his wife, debating whether she should study medicine in Moscow or engineering in East Germany. Analysts noted nothing operationally relevant. The transcript included Khalifa saying he wanted her to choose something that would make her happy, not something that would make him proud. When the authorization was reconfirmed in late July, the case officer requested reassignment. The request was denied. The assessment noted that operational doubt was normal, but mission-critical personnel could not be replaced at this stage. The officer remained on the team. By August 10th, the operation entered its execution phase. The trigger was a phone intercept, confirming Khalifa's arrival in Malta on August 17th. The window was 14 days, his standard vacation length. After that, he would return to Tripoli, and the fortress would close again for another year. The clock started running. MI6 established the operational architecture across 3 locations simultaneously. In London, the documents section created a charter contract under the name of a legitimate British sailing company that had filed for bankruptcy 6 months earlier. Far enough in the past that casual verification would find records. Recent enough that deep investigation would not yet have purged them. The contract showed a 2-week Mediterranean sailing holiday booked by David and Claire Ashford, married professionals from Surrey with documented sailing certifications and credit card receipts from 3 previous yacht charters in Greece. Every receipt was genuine. The Ashfords were real. They simply did not know their identities were being borrowed for August 1987. In Valletta, a liaison officer who never identified his employer negotiated the yacht rental through a Maltese broker who specialized in luxury tourism. The yacht selected was a 58-foot Beneteau Oceanis, large enough to justify the charter price, common enough to blend with 24 similar vessels in Maltese harbors every summer. The broker noted that Mr. Ashford spoke with the flat vowels of southern England and paid in cash advance, which was unusual but not unprecedented for clients who valued discretion. The yacht was registered as Seaborn Lady, and the transaction was completed on August 12th. At Royal Marine's pool, 2 SBS marksmen were pulled from training rotations without explanation. Both were surveillance and reconnaissance specialists with combat deployments in Oman and Northern Ireland. Both had qualified on long-range precision shooting in maritime environments. Neither was told the target's name or nationality. The briefing officer provided only the parameters: single high-value elimination, open water shot between 600 and 700 meters, diplomatic exposure catastrophic if captured. The marksmen were given 72 hours to prepare personal kit and memorize the exfiltration protocol. They were told they would be posing as a married couple. One noted that he had never sailed recreationally in his life. The briefing officer replied that wealthy British tourists frequently chartered yachts and hired captains, so seamanship was not a mission requirement. The marksmen were designated shooter primary and spotter control. No names appeared in any documentation. The team composition was lean by design. Shooter primary and spotter control would handle all execution elements. An MI6 handler, codenamed Harbor Master, would remain shore-based in Valletta, never approaching the yacht directly, but maintaining encrypted radio contact on a frequency borrowed from maritime emergency channels. Compartmentalization was absolute. Harbor Master knew the target's identity and the strategic objective. The marksmen knew neither. If captured, they could not compromise what they did not know. Communication protocols were built on the principle that silence was safer than encryption. Radio contact was restricted to 3 windows per day: 0, 800 hours, 1400 hours, and 2000 hours, with transmissions limited to 10 seconds. The code system used commercial maritime language. Sundown meant authorization to execute. Harbor full meant abort and exfiltrate. Weather delay meant postpone 24 hours. Any transmission outside scheduled windows would trigger immediate abort protocols. Escape routes were layered. Primary exfiltration was maritime. Sail northwest into international waters, then rendezvous with a commercial container ship 40 nautical miles offshore, where a prearranged deck officer would allow 2 passengers to board without logging their names. Secondary exfiltration was overland. If the yacht was compromised, the team would scuttle equipment, reach shore via inflatable dinghy, and activate a Land Rover positioned in a long-term parking garage in Sliema with diplomatic plates and a pre-cleared route to a British airbase in Sicily. Tertiary exfiltration was consular. If all other options failed, reach the British High Commission and declare a security emergency under protocols reserved for intelligence personnel in extreme danger. The planning consumed 11 weeks. By August 15th, all elements were positioned. Seaborn Lady was anchored in Masida Marina. Fuel tanks full, provisioned for 3 weeks at sea. Shooter primary and spotter control had 12 days before Khalifa's scheduled departure. The margin for error was tighter than anyone on the operational planning team preferred, but the target's schedule was immovable. The villa booking ended August 31st. After that, the window closed. August 17th, 0900 hours. Khalifa arrived at Lucca Airport on a Libyan Arab Airlines flight from Tripoli, traveling under his own name with a 6-man security detail. Maltese immigration logged him as a repeat visitor and cleared him through diplomatic channels without secondary screening. By 1100 hours, Khalifa was inside the villa compound, a 2-story structure on the coast south of Valletta, with limestone walls, terracotta roof tiles, and a terrace overlooking the sea. The security detail established a perimeter immediately. 2 men on vehicle patrol, 2 on foot patrol, 2 inside the villa at all times. The rotation schedule followed Khalifa's standard protocol. Shifts changed every 4 hours. No guard worked the same position twice consecutively. August 17th, 1300 hours. Seaborne Lady departed Mesita Marina under engine power, shooter primary at the helm wearing sunglasses and a linen shirt, spotter control on deck in a sundress and wide-brimmed hat, both waving to a neighboring yacht as they motored past. Harbor patrol logged the departure as routine. The yacht sailed south along the coast, maintaining visible tourist behavior. Slow speed, frequent stops to photograph fortifications, an inflatable dinghy towed behind that was never deployed. By 1600 hours, the yacht anchored 650 meters offshore from Khalifa's villa, positioned where 20 other leisure yachts floated in a loose grid across the harbor approaches. Over the next 5 days, spotter control lived behind glass. The yacht's main cabin had been modified before departure. Blackout fabric installed along the interior walls, a 6-inch horizontal gap cut at eye level along the starboard side, and a tripod-mounted spotting scope concealed behind a stack of paperback novels and a wine rack. From outside, the cabin appeared to be a darkened living space, where tourists retreated from midday heat. From inside, spotter control had unobstructed line of sight to the villa terrace. Surveillance was logged in 15-minute observation blocks. Each block recorded movement patterns, exposure duration, guard positions, and behavioral tells. Khalifa followed a predictable daily rhythm. Mornings, he remained inside until 1000 hours. Midday, he walked the terrace for 30 minutes, always accompanied by 2 guards. Afternoons, he disappeared inside for 3 to 4 hours. Evenings, he returned to the terrace between 1830 and 1900 hours, often alone for the first 10 to 15 minutes before guards joined him. The vulnerability window emerged on August 19th. At 1855 hours, Khalifa stepped onto the terrace alone, carrying a glass of something amber-colored, and stood at the railing facing the sea. He remained there for 11 minutes. 1 guard stayed inside the doorway, visible through the glass doors but not beside him. The angle was clean. The backdrop was stone wall. The range was 653 meters, confirmed by laser rangefinder disguised as a camera telephoto lens. Spotter control logged the pattern. On August 20th, the pattern repeated at 1858 hours. On August 21st, 1900 hours exactly. Khalifa was not taking risks. He was performing a ritual. Sunset on the terrace, every evening, the same exposure. Complications nearly collapsed the operation twice. On August 20th, a Maltese harbor patrol boat made an unscheduled pass through the anchorage, stopping beside Seaborne Lady to verify registration documents. Spotter control, still in sundress and tourist persona, handed over the charter contract and laughed about how expensive fuel was in Malta. The patrol officer noted that British sailors always complained about fuel prices. He wished them a pleasant holiday and motored away. The spotting scope remained concealed throughout the encounter. On August 21st, wind patterns shifted. A cross breeze from the northwest introduced drift variables that shooter primary had not accounted for in initial calculations. The shot was still possible, but the error margin tightened from 15 centimeters to 8. Shooter primary. Spent 4 hours that night recalculating ballistic drop and windage compensation using a handheld anemometer held outside the cabin door while spotter control maintained tourist behavior on deck, pretending to read a paperback under a solar lamp. The biggest danger was attention. If the villa's security team identified the yacht as anomalous, anchored too long, positioned too precisely, crew behavior inconsistent with leisure sailing, the mission would abort without a shot fired. So the team performed normalcy with disciplined precision. Every morning, spotter control emerged on deck in swimwear, stretched visibly, dove into the water for a 10-minute swim. Every afternoon, shooter primary appeared with a fishing rod, casting lines that never caught anything. Every evening, both sat in the cockpit with wine glasses, laughing at jokes neither found funny, performing the rituals of couples on holiday. What Khalifa did not know was that his evening routine had become a data source. What his security team did not know was that the yacht anchored offshore was logging their patrol rotations down to minute-by-minute precision. What Maltese harbor authorities did not know was that the British tourists who complained about fuel prices were calculating bullet trajectories through software designed for counter-terrorism operations. August 22nd. The light turned soft and golden, beautiful for tourists, perfect for a shooter who needed the target silhouetted against stone. Shooter, primary, and spotter control did not speak about the decision explicitly. The authorization had come through on encrypted burst transmission at 1400 hours. A single word that Harbormaster relayed from London: sundown. The window was open. The conditions were optimal. The target would follow his pattern, or he would not. The team prepared as if certainty existed. 1800 hours. Shooter primary moved into the cabin and closed the door. Spotter control remained on deck, maintaining visible tourist presence, reading a paperback with a glass of wine beside her. Inside, shooter primary assembled the rifle, a suppressed accuracy international PM chambered in 7.62 NATO, broken down into 3 sections and concealed inside a waterproof sailing equipment bag. The weapon was not exotic, it was reliable. The scope was a Schmidt and Bender 5-25-56 with mil-dot reticle, already zeroed for 650 meters during test firing at a range in Scotland 3 weeks prior. The firing position was prone, stabilized on a bipod with sandbags beneath the stock. 1850 hours. Khalifa stepped onto the terrace. Spotter control transmitted via bone conduction microphone concealed beneath her hat. Target visible. Inside the cabin, shooter primary settled into position, controlling breath, slowing heart rate through techniques practiced 10,000 times. The scope picture was clean. Khalifa stood at the railing, glass in hand, watching the horizon. One guard remained inside the doorway, visible but not blocking. Spotter control whispered numbers that never mentioned a person. Range 653, wind 3 knots northwest, angle down 8 degrees. The calculations had been rehearsed for 5 days. The variables were known. The shot was possible. Shooter primary adjusted for windage. 2 clicks right on the scope turret. Adjusted for elevation, confirmed previous 0. The crosshairs settled on center mass. Breathing slowed. Trigger finger moved to the first stage of pressure. 11 hours. Khalifa stopped moving. He was not frozen by awareness. He was simply still, watching the sun touch the water. A man who believed himself safe because he had built systems that made him safe. The vulnerability was not arrogance. It was routine. The mind elsewhere. The body present. The exposure measured in seconds. 1912 hours. Shooter primary pressed through the second stage. The suppressor reduced the report to a mechanical snap, lost in ambient harbor noise. The round crossed 653 meters of open air in 1.2 seconds, dropping 4.7 meters over the distance, compensating for wind drift, threading the gap between Khalifa's position and the guard inside the doorway. The impact was center thorax, high lung region. Khalifa dropped without sound. The glass shattered on stone. Shooter primary did not fire again. There was no confirmation needed. The training dictated immediate transition. Rifle disassembled in 90 seconds. Components returned to the equipment bag. Bag moved to the cockpit. Spotter control had already started the engine. The anchor was up before the guards inside the villa reached the terrace. By 1915 hours, Seaborn Lady was under power, sailing northwest at 6 knots, one yacht among dozens in evening harbor traffic. Within 30 minutes, the yacht crossed into international waters. The rifle and scope were wrapped in chain and dropped overboard at a depth of 200 meters. The equipment bag was shredded and scattered. The communication radio was wiped and stowed. By 2100 hours, Seaborn Lady was 42 nautical miles from Malta, approaching the rendezvous coordinates where a Liberian-flagged container ship was scheduled to pass. The deck officer who allowed 2 passengers aboard did not log names. He accepted an envelope containing £5,000 sterling and forgot the encounter within a week. The yacht was discovered 3 days later, adrift and empty, by Italian Coast Guard. Maltese authorities requested information. British authorities confirmed the charter was legitimate, but the clients had not returned the vessel. Insurance companies filed reports. No arrests were made. Seaborn Lady was eventually sold at auction. The case was classified as unexplained disappearance, possible accident at sea. By 1940 hours on August 22nd, Libyan security personnel inside the villa understood that Rashid Khalifa was dead. The first confusion was medical. Was this cardiac arrest, stroke, or something external? Within 10 minutes, the entry wound was identified. Within 30 minutes, Libyan intelligence officers were on site. The angle of entry suggested a shot from the harbor. Harbor patrol was notified. Every vessel within 1 kilometer was logged. 23 yachts, 18 fishing boats, 4 commercial transports. None appeared suspicious. All were tracked as they departed over subsequent hours. By the time analysts understood they were looking for a sniper platform that resembled a tourist yacht, the platform was international waters away. Official reactions hardened along predictable lines. Libya issued statements condemning the assassination as an act of state terrorism orchestrated by Western intelligence services. The Maltese government expressed concern and promised a full investigation. British Foreign Office spokesmen denied all knowledge and condemned politically motivated violence. The denials were transparent to anyone in the intelligence field. But transparency was not the point. The point was plausible deniability, the fiction that allowed governments to act without admitting they acted. The investigation produced forensic evidence, but no operational leads. The bullet was recovered, but the weapon was unregistered. Witness interviews revealed that a British yacht had been anchored offshore for 5 days, but harbor records showed legitimate charter documentation. The couple aboard had been seen swimming, fishing, reading books. They behaved exactly like tourists behaved. When authorities attempted to contact the charter company, they discovered it had ceased operations months prior. The paper trail ended in bankruptcy filings and disconnected phone numbers. Strategically, the assassination achieved its primary objective and triggered secondary consequences that planners had anticipated but could not control. Tactically, Khalifa was removed, a node eliminated, a network disrupted. Intelligence analysts reported that Libyan external operations experienced immediate degradation as subordinates competed for authority rather than coordinating operations. Trust fragmented. Paranoia increased. In the 18 months following Khalifa's death, 3 of his senior deputies were quietly reassigned or arrested on suspicion of collaboration with foreign services. The suspicions were baseless, but the system Khalifa had built was designed to assume betrayal. Without him to manage it, the system consumed itself. What the operation cost was harder to quantify. Diplomatically, relations between Malta and Britain cooled. Maltese officials understood that their territory had been used for an intelligence operation without their consent. And the violation of sovereignty created resentment that lasted years. Operationally, the success revealed a methodology that adversaries could study and counter. Coastal security protocols changed across multiple intelligence services. High-value targets with seaside properties began rotating locations unpredictably, or installing physical barriers that blocked line of sight from water approaches. For the personnel involved, consequences were uneven. Shooter primary and spotter control received commendations that appeared in no public record and promotions that carried no explanations. Both returned to standard duties within 6 months. Harbor Master requested transfer to a desk role in London, citing family reasons. The request was granted. The MI6 case officer who had experienced operational doubt drift remained in service, but never led another elimination operation. The assessment in his personnel file noted competence, but recommended against future assignments involving lethal action. The unintended consequences followed patterns that intelligence historians recognize. Tighter security that punished staff who had nothing to do with the breach. Paranoia that broke communication between departments that needed to coordinate. And a new appetite among certain governments for deniable operations conducted from platforms that looked harmless. Sailboats, fishing vessels, recreational aircraft. The lesson was absorbed quietly. Distance could be a weapon. Normalcy could be cover. When a yacht could be a firing platform, nowhere coastal felt truly off-grid. The moral question refuses simplification. Was Operation Silent Wake a legitimate act of strategic defense, or an extrajudicial execution conducted in violation of international law? One perspective argues prevention. Khalifa orchestrated operations that resulted in civilian casualties across Europe, and removing him saved lives that would otherwise have been lost in attacks that could not be stopped through diplomatic or legal channels. Intelligence is not policing. Threats do not wait for courtrooms. The alternative to action is accepting continued violence while filing protests no one reads. The opposing perspective argues assassination. A democratic state decided in secret who deserved to die, conducted that killing on foreign soil without trial or accountability, and then lied about it to allies and citizens alike. If the evidence was sufficient to justify killing, it was sufficient to justify prosecution. If the target was truly dangerous, extradition and transparency were available. The moment a government accepts that it can kill anyone, anywhere, based on classified evidence reviewed by no court, that government has abandoned the rule of law it claims to defend. The paradox sits in the gap between those positions. A clean kill may produce a dirtier world where every state believes maritime distance justifies unilateral action, where vacation homes become threat surfaces, and where the invisible rules that prevent constant low-grade warfare between intelligence services erode into mutual escalation. The calculation that Operation Silent Wake was worth its cost assumes that Khalifa's death prevented more harm than the precedent created. Whether that assumption proved correct depends on variables that remain classified and consequences that unfolded across decades. What is your take on state-sponsored assassinations conducted under deniability protocols? If you had proof a target was orchestrating attacks but could not prosecute them legally, do you accept killing them in secret to prevent future harm? Or is that the moment a democracy becomes what it fears? Drop your perspective in the comments. If this operation made you reconsider what intelligence work actually requires, hit that like button and share this with someone who thinks espionage looks like the movies.